parable of the lost sheep. It's the focus of our study this week. In this story, we're given a picture of a shepherd who's in charge of 100 sheep, and one of them wanders off. It's in this parable where Jesus says, "What do you think if a man has 100 sheep and one of them goes astray? Does he not leave the 99 on the mountain and go in search for the one that went astray?" I think the answer to the question that he's seeking is, of course he would, because that's the love of the Father. And if he finds it, he goes on to say, "Truly I say to you, he rejoices over it more than over the 99 that never went astray." So it is not the will of the Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish. Now, to really understand that last verse, you have to understand all of the context to which Jesus is speaking to in chapter 18 of Matthew. Jesus, in the first verse, is actually confronted with a question from his disciples. They ask him, "Who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And then it says that Jesus calls a kid to come to him, and he puts him in the midst of them. So they're surrounding Jesus and this child that's with them. And then he says, "Unless you turn or convert and become like this child, this kid, you'll never enter the kingdom of heaven." Once again, we actually have a parable that's about the kingdom. He's reframing his disciples and us. He's reframing their view on relationship with God and relationship with each other. What do I mean by that? Well, in his kingdom, when his disciples come to him and says, which one of us is greatest in the kingdom? Like, in other words, which one of us is going to be kind of maybe second or third in command? Rank us, Jesus. And Jesus is saying, you don't get it. In my kingdom, humility is greatest. Because God values people and relationship above status, that sort of thing. It's the opposite of the way the world sees it. The world is all about getting power by crushing the competition and being self-serving and competing against one another. But that's not God's love. That's not relationship in God's kingdom. That's not how God works. God's love is selfless, because true love is selfless. God's love is sacrificial. It's personal. It's patient. What this parable is really about is God's love for His children. See, He's talking to believers here. That's what's really remarkable. He would leave 99 and go find the one that wandered off. That's how much He loves each of us personally. Let me ask you, when you think about God's love, ponder that for a second. What comes to mind? When you think of God's love for you, let's be personal here. What comes to mind? Is that something that you find pretty easy to accept? Some do. Or is it something really difficult to accept? Take some time before you get into the study questions as a group and discuss, where are you at in that? When it comes to God's love, what comes to mind? Is it hard for you to accept? Is it easy for you to accept? This will help you as you begin to study this parable and the questions that will guide you through the discussion.